The story of Heartstopper was almost totally different based on how things looked at first. One of the most surprising things in Heartstopper was to see Imogen dating Ben. Although it's a good thing for Imogen to get over Nick, going from that to Ben was very unfulfilling. And what makes this relationship even more strange is that Ben is a cruel human being who never even treated Charlie right when they went out secretly. To make this worse, Ben never loved Imogen, but it's good that Imogen figured that out quickly. But then the show almost looked different because this relationship wouldn't have happened, as it doesn't exist in the novels the show's based on. In some ways, the experience helped Ben and Imogen develop much better and learn from the awful relationship. However, things would have turned out very differently if they didn't date, as that was the intention before their character arc was further enhanced for dramatic purposes. Charlie had a hard time in Heartstopper 2 as some of his traumatic moments were revisited, from how he got outed in the first place to how it affected him, which was very sad. In the show, the explanation for how Charlie came out without his knowledge was that Tao spoke too loudly about Charlie's sexuality till others picked it up and started tormenting Charlie. What made Charlie forgive Tao for this was that Tao confessed to him, and Charlie wasn't angry as he quickly got over what Tao did. Interestingly, this particular situation was intended to happen differently. Instead of Tao coming clean to Charlie, the information was meant to get to Charlie in a different way that would have made him far more angry. Elle, who's not in the show, was the one who would have told Charlie what Tao did, and of course Charlie would have found it harder to forgive Tao, which would have resulted in an ill feeling between them, leading to a considerable distance between the two childhood friends. So it would have been a massive scare if Charlie and Tao had a big quarrel, which was what would have happened if the show didn't handle that part differently. Asexuality was one big topic that was intended to happen differently in the show or not at all. In Heartstopper 2, Isaac finally discovers that he's very different from his friends and has entirely different relationship goals. Although fans may have suspected that Isaac might be an aromantic right from season 1, where he had no romantic interests, he was initially designed not to give off asexuality vibes as it wasn't included in the books. And what inspired this direction in the show is that the creative writer Alice Oseman feels the same way as the character of Isaac. So even though Isaac isn't in the books, Alice made sure to expand on Isaac's status to make people understand what it feels and looks like, but it wasn't planned to be explored at first. Isaac in the show takes us to another interesting point that almost changed Heartstopper. The viewers discovered that Isaac liked James and vice versa in the show, but this wasn't meant to be. James was planned to be a minor character who encountered Charlie instead of Isaac. James's story was designed to be in one scene where they played the truth or dare game when Charlie refused to kiss him after they were dared. Also, one other thing about the character was that he was meant to be known as the other openly gay person in that school aside from Charlie, but that would have been all, as he shouldn't have had feelings for Isaac and vice versa like the show made it out to be. Another big difference that almost changed Heartstopper involves Elle. In the latest season, Elle has developed so much that she even applied to a school of arts and has to leave Higgs for Lambert for her 6th form. And this particular storyline could have happened differently. And the different way is that Elle would have remained at Higgs and not get to explore her talent at the art school. So what this means is that a significant change would have also happened to Tao and Elle's relationship, because Tao wouldn't have been so insecure at first when he knew that Ella might be leaving. Also, they may have been able to bond less than they did if Tao wasn't afraid that he could lose Ella. So Elle remaining at Higgs and not moving would have made Heartstopper look very different if the show had stuck to what was in the books. The Paris trip brought a lot of fantastic and sensitive issues on board, and one of them was everyone figuring out Nick is French and that his dad, Stéphane, actually stays in Paris. And for someone who rarely gets to talk to or see his dad, Nick was very interested in meeting him on their trip to Paris. After a lot of back and forth, the dad finally agreed to meet Nick, and Nick was so glad that he even took Charlie along. The show continued to show how Stéphane has been so distant from Nick, especially when he got a call and had to leave before Nick could properly talk to him. And the crazy thing is that this scenario was almost left out and would have made Heartstopper look different. In the books, Nick's dad never showed up or attempted to see Nick, which was a terrible experience for Nick during the Paris trip. So If this scene had been excluded from the show, like in the books, Nick would have had a more challenging time meeting and sitting with his dad later in their home, and he wouldn't have been able to come out to him about his relationship with Charlie. Charlie became more mature in Heartstopper 2, and he got to have some exciting moments where he gave a piece of his mind to those who have hurt him in the past. After finding out Ben was yet to get over him and was trying to apologize to him later in the show, Charlie was furious as he let out every terrible thing Ben had done to hurt him in the past. And at the end of the scene, Charlie does the unexpected by not forgiving Ben even though Ben asked for it, and that's such a proud moment for every Heartstopper fan. However, this special clap back Charlie gave Ben almost didn't happen. Instead, Charlie's speech to Ben could have gone to Harry when he tried to get into Tara's birthday party. Although Charlie was also super daring to Harry in that scene, it could have happened differently. So the epic speech was transferred to Ben instead. But Heartstopper would have been different if Charlie's response to Ben in the show had been removed. Heartstopper spiced up the activities in the characters' lives with exciting moments like the bonfire party. However, Nick had an awful moment at the party as he couldn't enjoy himself as much. So this moment wasn't enjoyable for Charlie and Nick until they left the scene, and the crazy thing is that this bonfire party wouldn't have happened because it wasn't included in the books. So Heartstopper would have turned out very differently without this particular party, as it made Nick face many things he found scary, and he thought he was a bad boyfriend to Charlie. But Nick later relaxed, especially after Charlie comforted him and made him realize he could come out whenever and however he wanted. Charlie's comfort and statement wouldn't have been necessary if the events of the bonfire didn't happen. Imogen is one character that has made a big difference in the show, mainly because the character wasn't even included in the books. But the thing about this character that would have changed Heartstopper entirely was that the actress Rhea Norwood, who portrays Imogen, auditioned for a very different role. Because Imogen wasn't included in the books, the open casting call for auditions didn't have the character included, so Rhea auditioned for the position of Darcy. Unfortunately, Rhea didn't get a call back for the role she applied for, and she gave up hope and utilized the disappointment to focus on her second year of drama school. Interestingly, Rhea finally got a recall for Imogen and later got the role. And if the casting had happened another way around, Heartstopper would have been very different, because it's hard to imagine Rhea as any other person than Imogen. Just as Rhea's casting could have altered the show in ways that fans would never find out, the casting of Kit Connor almost changed everything for Heartstopper 2. It's a fan fact that Kit makes a perfect Nick Nelson, from the body to his sexuality, but then Kit would have been a different character as he didn't even audition for the role of Nick Nelson. According to Kit, he had a different perspective while preparing his audition tape, as he didn't even consider the role for Nick. But instead, Nick was drawn to Charlie from an emotional point of view, as he liked Charlie's lines and how special they were. So Kit overlooked that he didn't meet up with other requirements of Charlie and still went ahead to apply. He said, "I wouldn't suit that role at all. Even from a physical standpoint, it's very much not me." But yeah, I think they quickly realized that I wouldn't be very good for Charlie and that I was probably better suited to Nick. So thanks to the casting team who figured this out, because Heartstopper would have been a very different show than it currently is if Kit had gotten the chance to play Charlie. And that means Joe Locke might not be a lead character, as he may have gotten a different role, and that's a big difference that could have altered how Heartstopper turns out. Would you have preferred Heartstopper took these 10 different turns, or is the story just perfect as it is? Share your thoughts in the comments, and thanks for watching.